And then France and Italy, they occupy the second position in terms of number of projects accepted during the two calls of 2015 and 2016. This is another picture of my hometown, actually. Now, cooperation with Spain. We've had a lot of projects together, actually. So, under Erasmus Mundus, joint master degrees, we've had this project with Technique Patrimoine Territoire de l'Industrie. It's with the University of Alicante. And under Erasmus Plus Mundus partnerships, during the period of 2007-13, we've had together 12 projects. And I've spoken with some of you, and some of you are familiar with VROS and other projects. So I'm not going to read all this list. You probably know it, and it'll be available for you if you want to know about it. But it's a list of 12 projects. Okay. This is about capacity building, actually. In some further details, actually, on our cooperation. You can see in 2008, Spain coordinated 2 projects and involving Tunisia as a partner. And Spain was as well involved in 2 projects as a partner, like Tunisia, in the same year. So you see the number of projects together, and the overall number of projects during Tempus 4, which means from 2008 and 2013 is 12 projects in which Tunisia is involved with Spain as a partner in projects either coordinated by Spain or Spain was involved as a partner in those projects. Here it's about capacity building projects. The 2 calls of 2015-16. You can see that Tunisian higher education institutions and Spanish higher education institutions worked together in 6 projects in 2015 and the same number in 2016. As far as the first round of ICM is concerned, so you can see as well 5 projects per year for the 2 calls. Okay, so this is a very, now we'll move to the most important part. As Graham mentioned only the additional funding for Tunisia regarding ICM, but I'll add another information to this, which is about capacity building. So there will be an additional funding of 10 million euros to Tunisia, actually, for these 2 calls, the current call and the next one. For the current call, there will be 3 million euros on ICM, and the share of Spain is 700,000 euros. And there will be as well 3 million euros for capacity building higher education. So there are opportunities for joint projects in under Key Action 2 of the Erasmus Plus programs. As far as the next call is concerned, there will be 3 million euros on ICM, on the mobility projects, the Key Action 1. And of course, during those 2 calls, the next 2 calls, there will be 500,000 for Youth in Action, which is about civil society in both countries. So you can disseminate this information among the youth who might be interested in working with Tunisia. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Buenos días, estoy muy satisfecha que puedo participar en esta jornada informativa y quiero agradecer a la Agencia Nacional de España para invitarme, teniendo en cuenta que la calidad de proyectos y de presentaciones de hoy son muy importantes y que desgraciadamente mi español no es muy bien. Voy a continuar en inglés, pero durante las pausas estoy preparada a practicar español. Gracias. It is not easy, but with the projects of mobility, with international credit mobility, I think that we will also improve the language competencies with time. So I'm not going to present, I have a little bit of statistics, a little bit of priorities in my slide, but I know that I am the last person before the coffee break, so I will try just to pass the key messages, and then of course during the networking session I'm available until the end of the information day, so we will have the opportunity to speak more. I'm going to speak not only about Serbia, but about the Western Balkan region as such, and about our position in this call for proposal and also the opportunities for cooperation. We are a region that is neighboring the EU, we are within the Europe, and as such we are not very interesting. We have a very traditional higher education system, all the countries of the Western Balkans. We follow the Bologna process. The tempo, the dynamic of the higher education reform is in some countries slower, in some is faster. In some countries it is better on the paper than in the reality. In some others it is better in the reality. I will not lie and say, even though that we implemented DCTS, that it works perfectly and that we abolished the ex cathedra method of teaching. We still have it in some faculties. We still have large groups for teaching, but we have also positive examples with universities that only have smaller groups for teaching and for practical exercises. Some of our faculties lack modernized teaching methodology, but some other faculties, their students win in the competition of resolving case studies. So there are good and not so good examples. Definitely there is room for improvement, and this is why we still want to use and prefer to use the capacity building for higher education. When it comes to the types of the institutions and the number of the student population, on the slide you can see the average student population in the Western Balkan region. It is not spread across all the countries in the same way. For instance, there is a young population in Albania and in Kosovo, while in Serbia there is about 250,000 students. So, and in Montenegro, since Montenegro is a small country, the number of students is not so high. But they have one big public university that covers all the subject areas, so it is possible to cooperate with Montenegro in all the subject areas, and also two private higher education institutions. Apart from this academic higher education, there are also the colleges of applied studies that provide professional or vocational higher education institutions. I think that this is something similar to that also in Spain there is this type of vocational higher education, if I'm not mistaken. This is the continuation of the escuelas grandes. I do not know how you call them, but there is definitely something very similar. So if there are colleagues in the audience for this type of these institutions, there is also room for cooperation. And the academic calendar is a little bit different, which affects the mobility. The academic year starts from the 1st of October, but of course it is possible to cooperate in September as well, but it has to be negotiated with the partner and agreed with the partner from the Western Balkans. The structure, I will not go into too many details. So apart from the level of the bachelor, there is master and the PhD level, and also two types of specialization that are offered at something that we may call the 7th or the 8th level of our previous national qualification system, but that corresponds more or less to the 7th and to the 8th level of the EQF. Some countries in the region reference their qualification framework to the European qualification framework. Some are going to do so, but more or less we follow the European qualification framework, so it is comparable and it is easy to discuss with partners the potential cooperation. When it comes to the internationalization, for us, participation in the Action 2 of the Erasmus Mundus and now the Erasmus Plus is really something that made the higher education institutions to think about how they could open to the world and how they could improve in order to be able to cooperate with other universities. not just to send teachers and to send students, but also to receive, because our goal is not just to send, but also to receive students and teachers. And of course, one of the first challenges was to create a catalog of courses, which has been done successfully by many of the higher education institutions, at least in Serbia. Of course, we cannot say that these catalogs are perfect. They contain a limited number of courses, but our advice to the higher education institutions was that it is better to be sincere and to put a limited number than to put everything and to say everything is possible. There are 2 or 3 ways of offering teaching in foreign languages. One that is used mostly at master studies and PhD studies is to offer the whole study program in a foreign language. The other, that is more common for the bachelor studies, is to organize consultative teaching for a group of students, or 1 or 2 or 3 students that come in the same time, because it is very difficult to offer the teaching at the level of the whole bachelor studies in a foreign language, since there are not so many foreign students who study in Serbia, and it would be very difficult for the universities to accommodate. But this can be also agreed when you prepare the interinstitutional agreement for the cooperation with the university or with the college from the Western Balkans. What are your expectations? How do you see the teaching process? What would you recognize as a credit? We conducted a survey while we were working on the national strategy on internationalization in Serbia, and we noticed that usually when the institutions from the EU send their students, they send them to get the new learning experience, but they do not recognize the credits afterwards. This is what the students told us, the foreign students. This was before the ICM, before the Erasmus+, but we were very curious to learn how it would work and what are our upsides and downsides. The students, what I can also share with you, because the sample was about 200 students that studied in Serbia at that time, were satisfied with the quality of teaching, but part of this teaching was realized through the consultations with the teaching staff. So the ratio student-teacher was almost 1:1, which is why perhaps they were satisfied. It remains to be seen what will be the impact of the Erasmus Plus in this sense, since we are planning to conduct and to repeat this survey soon after maybe 1 year of the implementation or 2 years of the implementation of the Erasmus Plus, to get to know what were our good sides and our bad sides, where to improve. Of course, when it comes to the number of the applications approved, you can see that the Western Balkan region is very active thanks to the financial support of the Commission. It is easy then to be active. And that we really like to cooperate under the international credit mobility. As Graham already presented, the learner and staff mobility is almost balanced, but also there is the incoming mobility from the program country side, so just not only the outgoing mobility, so both possibilities are possible in practice. Here you can see the activity of the Western Balkan countries and the entity as well, and the distribution of number of applications by the program country. You can see that Spain is active. It has been active more in the last call than in the first one, like all the countries. But we hope and we think that there is room for improvement, that we can cooperate even more, develop new partnerships, which will then slowly, I hope, build into Marie Curie, in Horizon 2020, that we can use the ICM as the first step for just getting to know each other. What are our issues and challenges? I dare say not yours, because you have so many years of experience within the Erasmus. Now we are celebrating 30 years of Erasmus, but in the Western Balkans we have just started a few years ago. We have to find the systematic way to evaluate the student language competencies before coming to the mobility. We cannot use the online linguistic support tool to do so. So our universities are trying to find a way, but sometimes it is very difficult to balance. Some students bring certificates that they know this foreign language at the level of B2, C1, B1. And some students do not have these certificates, so we need to find a way at the national level how to deal with the issue in order to be sure that we are sending students with the right competencies to your institutions, and at the same time that we are able to receive. One of our greatest challenges is to improve the teaching methodology in a foreign language. We had 2 ongoing projects in Tempus for the internationalization of higher education. We developed the first tailor-made courses for staff, administrative and academic staff, in order how to deal with foreign students and how to teach in English in order to improve their language competencies. But that's not enough, that's not sufficient. We need to invest more effort in improving the teaching methodology in a foreign language, because this is definitely, I honestly believe, a little bit different when you teach in your own mother tongue. When it comes to the challenges, one challenge is also characteristic for the last call. This is that a certain number of higher education institutions used the wrong interinstitutional agreements. They're very similar, but the title is very different. Between a partner and the program country is the right one, not between the program countries. So it is also important to pay attention to this, because the mobility is not eligible if an inappropriate model of interinstitutional agreement is used. Our position in the Erasmus Plus is every year different. I dare say that Serbia is always in some sort of a transition. Now we are in a transition from a partner country to the program country. In this call, we are, for the higher education part of the program, a partner country. And as such, we are eligible to participate, like all others, in the capacity building for higher education, Jean Monnet, where it is so easy to form networks and so important to cooperate more within the networks that are open to everyone, to the whole world. But also, from the next year, we expect to pilot K2 strategic partnerships in higher education. But since this would be a pilot action for Serbia, we would be able to be only applicants without providing the added value, but where you can be also our partners also without providing any added value. So we hope that this will be even more opportunities for the cooperation within the higher education, at least for the next call. For other actions, at the moment, mobility actions, we are also able to participate in this limited capacity of piloting key action 1 for schools, for school education, for adult education, vocational education and training in youth. But there are some limitations as we are conducting these actions for the first time. So this is in a way a transition to the status of the program country in the future. When it comes to the capacity building, I'm not going to present the action or to read all the priorities. It is important to know that the deadline is 9th of February noon, Brussels time. The applications are submitted via the e-form that can be, and all the documents can be signed at the website of the executive agency, but the projects have to be in line with the priorities. So it is not only important that they are submitted on time, that the famous LFM is written in a good way, but also that we stick with the priorities. And during the process of the evaluation, the individual experts will look whether these priorities were applied, but also if your application is shortlisted, the partner country authorities as well as the EU delegation will also look in that particular country whether these priorities align with the national strategies and needs of the partner countries, since this is the capacity building of the partner countries. In this sense, for Serbia, I highlighted in red the priorities that were not covered in the last 5 or 6 years, which could be helpful. Of course, others are also applicable. And the project has to stick either with the national priorities or with the regional priorities. So these are the 2 options. Also, there are the priorities for everyone else from the Western Balkan region. The category B of the priorities is very difficult to tackle because most of these topics were already covered for the Western Balkans, but still they remain within the official list of the priorities. Of course, in order not to avoid any kind of double funding, we always advise the applicants to consult the list of the projects at the website of the executive agency or our database of the projects that were funded with the cooperation with Serbia. It's not only an ethical, but it's also a problem when you have a topic that was already funded in the past, so nobody would be happy at the end, and there will be many problems during the implementation. So also for this group of priorities, it is important to see whether it was tackled and how in the past. By this, non-university sector at tertiary education level, This is the ISCED definition, but what lies behind are these vocational higher education institutions. In all these Western Balkan region, they are usually colleges of applied studies that provide 3 years education, bachelor of applied studies, and some of them in some of the countries also provide a master of applied studies. So this is the possibility, and it is under the category D, probably because of the cooperation with the labor market, with the economy. So you can more or less apply with any kind of a topic that any kind of curricular reform or any kind of the topic that supports this level of education. Some topics relevant for the higher education reform in Serbia, of course, an improvement of the accountability of higher education institutions. We never had an application funded in this field. This priority existed also in Tempus, but nobody was interested to apply, neither in Tempus, neither in Erasmus Plus so far. So it's completely open. Further rationalization, when we say rationalization, it's a painful word. It means that someone would lose a job eventually or get a new one, but that people will change. Of student services, this is also a painful topic that nobody wanted to tackle for Serbia at least. The enrollment policy, this is, I dare say, more a political question, but if you have a good cooperation with our ministry, you can try to make a project out of it, as well as financing of higher education. We had some attempts within the projects in the past period, conducted nice analysis, but until now, there were no changes of the existing system. The deadline for inclusion of the Ministry of the Education, Science and Technological Development of the Republic of Serbia in the capacity building expired on 15th of December, but I'm sure that they will consider the proposals if there are any coming from this information day this week. Because as you know, the ministries, as Graham mentioned, have to participate in the structural capacity building projects, those that should impact the whole education system. And in Serbia, there is the internal procedure at the national level for inclusion of the ministry. So this is the information. These are also some general observations from our side if you are interested in applying for the capacity building, but of course, we are more than ready to provide any kind of the feedback of the project idea or comment the project idea that you might have today during the networking session, or any time later on after the information day. We can also organize a meeting via the webinar or some other tool. And these are also some useful resources that could be interesting for you if you are planning to submit a credit mobility project, or check whether there is any double funding. And the last is the description of the Serbian education system available in Eurydice format, but also in Spanish at our website. We are really looking forward to cooperate with you, and I hope and we wish you a very successful call for proposals, and I hope that these numbers that the colleagues presented in the morning will be even better for the next call. Thank you very much.
Bueno, como veis, vamos un poco retrasados, así que tomamos café. Solo tenemos unos minutos hasta las 12:15 en la que retomaremos la sesión. Muchas gracias.